This is Governor Bobber. I like good day, doctors.
George Allen here. Good day, doctors.
Good Friday evening, everyone. It is Friday night, Dr. Poxon's Political Architect Show. We got a busy week this past week. Welcome back, Dr. Jeff, from your globe-trotting adventures from around the country. Welcome back. Hopefully you didn't get stuck in any massive rainstorms or anything like that. But
actually going down to South Carolina on Thursday, it was a massive downpour. So I left around 4 p.m. here, got in around 3:30 in South Carolina. But yeah, around past midnight, it was starting to get really bad. So made it safely, fortunately. But yeah, it was definitely cut the storm.
Yeah, it's we had some crazy storms here too last week. Was it last Thursday or Friday? We had Thursdays when we had the big storms, right, Don? Or was it Friday we had?
It might have been Friday. Yeah. I think it might have been. I think actually I expected on Friday because I think I cut my grass on Thursday.
And then you cut it again on a Monday.
Oh, that's the thing. I looked at the grass today and I'm like, yeah. We've had way too much rain for my pleasure. I mean, the lawns look green in the neighborhood, but we're just cutting the grass a lot more often than we were last couple of years.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, I could go pretty much roughly about the last 2 weeks of July to September without having to cut the grass because it just wouldn't rain, And the grass would be so crunchy that you walk on it and like crackle. So at least the zoysia grass did that.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, I will say this: despite all the fact that I really can't stand it when we get this deluge of rain and everything like that, we had some people over the house last night that were from Utah, and we were talking about the water issues in the West, and it is severe. I mean. Utah's feeling it. They didn't get a lot of snow this year, and that's how they get most of the water. Is from the snowpack melt, and they didn't get a lot, so they're hurting. We already know that California has been in kind of the severe drought situation for years, and more restrictions are going into effect, particularly for watering lawns. I think actually they said they're in Utah. These friends. That the restrictions are coming into effect where you can water your lawn twice a week and you can't water it in the same day. I mean you can water in the morning or the evening, but it's got to be on like 2 different days. And I think Dwight, I mean we may have talked about this, Dwight, in terms of like Lake Mead and you have Lake Mead and Lake Powell. I mean these are areas that besides provide water sports, boating activities and things like that for people who want to get out and enjoy it. There's also a lot of, with Lake Mead in particular, it's the way the government, gets water to a lot of these Western states. And, it's having a real problem, right? Where they found a body in a barrel and, all these, which was from about 1970s. And, I think they're finding cars and other boats, other things that sunk that no one's seen for decades.
So New Dead Sea.
Yeah, no, I mean, they've gone back. I know the media's gone back and looked at Lake Powell several times because of the change in the water level over the years. Is how they've had to kind of reorient and decide where they're going to put boat ramps and stuff like that because where there was a boat ramp before, there's no water. So then you got to figure out where you're going to do that and how you're going to launch a boat and where you're going to do it from now on. So it's not a joke there that the West is just not getting enough water. Plus the fact if you're living in California, you're going to face another year of rolling blackouts.
Yes, California has become a third world country from the 1970s and 80s.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's always been bad parts of California, but
you got homeless people, you got people doing their business on the middle of the streets. You've got crime. You got rolling blackouts. I mean, where they got
taxes, high housing prices. I mean, there's a lot of problems. I mean, look, I mean, they did lose a seat in Congress, right? I mean, and I think if this keeps up, I mean, over time, they're going to continue losing seats in Congress. It'll continue to shift to Texas and Florida and other places where people are moving to.
Florida.
I mean, one of the biggest problems in the West is just that with California, people left California, but then they moved to Arizona. I've got my son in Arizona. I mean, and they've got a huge, problem. A lot of people have moved in, and now they're all, chasing after the same limited resource. I mean, if Arizona is basically a desert, most people don't have lawns anyway. It's a desert landscape of rocks and cactuses, for the most part. You can't grow grass in most parts of Arizona.
That's true. It's like, and I know our mutual friend Dr. John was telling us. He goes, all these East Coast folks moved to Arizona, start planting. He was saying how Arizona was great for allergy sufferers because they had nothing, but they come in, they plant their grass, they plant their flowering, azalea bushes, that take a lot of water and start causing sneezing, sniffling, and runny noses because they got to have their East Coast lifestyle in Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's true. I mean, if you're out there, I mean, with an arid climate, you're not as likely to get that, right? But if you try to introduce something that's not native to the area, and you are spending the money to water your lawn or water your plants, you will start. You can change that. So, my wife just returned from Utah last week, and she has one set of problems when she's there in terms of breathing and things like that. Maybe it's altitude, and then she has a whole nother set of issues when she comes home because of allergies.
Well, I tell you, it's funny, the whole water problems in the West. This is a problem. It's not this is something they've known about since the 70s. They could have done stuff to mitigate these problems. They could have built some desalination plants, frankly. I think they didn't build the first one to the mid 90s, maybe. I want to say down in San Diego or somewhere around there. California has a desalination plant, but and also the other aspects is, I know they don't like to drill for oil, but maybe they should drill for some new wells and so on. I mean, you got to drill deep, but I mean,
well, I mean, these people from Utah said, their perspective. I mean, they lived in Utah basically all their lives. It's just that. The government hasn't done anything about, dams in terms of, improving the dams. It's been the same way for 40, 50 years.
Yep.
And they believe that that's also part of the problem is that, they're using old technology as such. And so therefore that's also, contributing to this problem of how to manage it.
Yep. And so I mean, I know the left likes to scream this and that. This is also killing agriculture in California too. They're damming up the water. They're keeping the water from the vineyards in the valley and so on. I remember Sean Hannity a few years ago. I want to say maybe 10 years ago, he did a story on the smelt and how they would not release water because they didn't want to kill the smelt that's on the other side. That by going through whatever. Kill the smelt, and they wanted to protect the smelt, and they had farmers, their grape vineyards were drying out, and
yeah,
so
I mean, but too, I mean, out west, I mean, for a lot of those farmers, I mean, because the government runs a lot of these programs, I mean, they've been cutting back on the allocation, right? And so, I mean, it does make me wonder. Every year they're looking at the water and they're saying, oh, we got a problem. You look at Lake Mead and look at all these other things and the lack of snow in Utah and Nevada and places like that where they would normally have them and what they have to do. It does make you wonder what the long-term impact will be for agriculture in some of these states, as to how much the federal government cuts back. If you can't give the farmers enough water to irrigate their crops, what are they supposed to do? I mean, how are we going to get fed? What are we going to be eating?
I think we need to invest in those. What are those things they had on Tatooine that collected the moisture from the air? Maybe we should start building those things. I mean, Joe Biden already thinks dilithium crystals are real. I saw some headline that he wants to have cars run on dilithium crystals. But this whole government agriculture
at
thing
some
is
point
good.
in time, I really do want the viewers at some point in time when they're out there, they should be leaving comments and chiming in about all these Star Trek and Star Wars references. Do
They
you
should.
understand what we're talking about?
I think the Star Wars references probably not as many, but the Star Trek references most people get. I think.
So yeah, I think there was like a moisture farm, which is another way of saying it was like a dirt farm. I guess we are paying for some dirt farmers, but that's just another subsidy, kind of issue there.
And there was a what do you call? They made a what do you call? Back in the days, there's people. I mean, there's water is, it's kind of like if you remember the movie Dune. That's a new one for you guys. Dune,
No,
great.
that's 84.
Yeah, that was a great movie. The one with the Picard in it.
Patrick Stewart.
Not the remakes. Yes. And it's funny. By the way,
He also had Sting as one of the villains.
Yeah, and I went to go see Doctor Strange, right? And who shows up when I was so tempted to yell out Picard. Like there's an episode of Star Trek where they thought Picard was a god, and this one is like Picard. And I was very tempted to scream out, but I figured that'd be wrong, so I didn't do that.
Not if you're in a movie theater. You're supposed to just watch and react, but not shout out something, right?
Yeah, I don't think anybody in the theater would have gotten it if I said the Picard. I know there was a years ago, the Improv Anywhere people, they did a thing where I think it was one of the Star Trek, I think maybe First Contact, and they had a bunch of them just show up in front of a movie theater and bow down and pray to the Star Trek movie poster. But we've had I think fun and games and stuff. By the way, speaking of agriculture, also I did finally get my garden in, and hopefully in a few weeks.
We do need at least the annual, if not now a weekly report on how your garden's doing.
I know. Actually, one of my pepper plants actually has a small little jalapeno one about this big right now. Here's the thing: as soon as I start giving my plants steroids, aka Miracle Grow, they just shoot right up. I was talking to somebody about how do you see your garden looks. Oh, I use Miracle. You're putting steroids on there, And I think I bought the last jug of or gallon of Roundup at the Home Depot this afternoon. And well, basically they're like I'm stocking up on it because I'm down to like 4 gallons of Roundup because they're going to start banning it.
Home Depot or just in general?
In general, because there's a class action lawsuit. They claim you get cancer.
Well, this class action lawsuit, sure, but yeah, glycophage. I mean, I don't know. It's the thing is, of course, I'm always a little bit hesitant when like a big company like Monsanto, creates something like that.
One of the greatest corporations in America, Monsanto.
But yeah, so it's like you have to always wonder because there are super large.
Monsanto pays the bills.
Mm-hmm.
I said Monsanto used to pay the bills for a lot of things.
Well, anyway, so it's like it's like saying Dow Corning, and like all the was it the phenylchlorinated butane or whatever, the PCBs, what it stands for,
yeah.
But the stuff that was used to cool like the transformers for electric grids and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously you don't really know all the until you try it out, but at some point you kind of realize what's going on, and then companies are so resistant to to really admit that there's dangerous, even like I've heard stories. I've kind of done the documentary on like when we created the leaded gasoline, and they knew back
mm-hmm.
then it was dangerous, but they went ahead with it. So it's just like.
But this is going to shock you, Jeff, a little bit. I got a friend of mine whose family comes from Thailand.
That's shocking.
Okay, well, not that part. This is what's going to shock you. Uh, his granddad was telling us a story about how he used to rub PCB, on his hands to relieve arthritis pains.
You sure that's not WD-40? Because I've heard of that. I'm not sure about PCB.
No, actually, I do know. That was actually my next segue because Don and I used to work with a lady named Patty Lasky, and she had a can of WD-40 by her typewriter.
Well,
I think she may have had arthritis.
WD-40 can solve a lot of problems. I didn't know about
That
I don't
is
know, arthritis and stuff like that, but it sure
Yeah.
took care of a lot of
loosens
squeaks.
joints, that's for sure.
Yeah,
is true.
right.
But I tell you, no, but
You got a
actually,
squeaky
Patty
joint?
Hey, does Patty what do you call it? We should send Patty our YouTube link and she could answer us if she used it for the typewriter or was it for her aching joints.
Yeah, I mean, our old friend Dave Almasis. I mean, I give Dave a heck of a lot of credit. Dave has stayed in touch with her over the years and tries to visit. Always visits her in Florida when he's
Is she
there.
in Orlando? Where is she?
She was in Orlando, but I haven't seen her for way too long. I really feel
Yeah,
bad.
I need to send Dave an email, so I'll give her a call when I'm down there later. Hang out, take her out to lunch, take her out to lunch or something like that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, at least I should get her phone number from Dave and see what he. I don't know what her, what her status is health wise and everything like that. But
Yeah, she's got to be what? She's got to be around 90 years old now, at least, right?
yeah, that was the other thing. I'm thinking like, Dave never said she died, but she's got to be way up there.
I mean, Queen Elizabeth might have been a contemporary of hers,
I mean, she retired. She retired from AIM when we were still over on
Connecticut Avenue.
Connecticut Avenue. I mean, we left Connecticut Avenue in what was it, 2013, I think.
When did AJ work for you? I think that's when you guys moved over.
AJ came in like 2013 probably. He probably came in.
Because I remember
that was a challenging time. I love AJ, but he wasn't suited for the job.
Well, he's working with our friend Matthew now over at Bruce Everly.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are things that AJ can do and was good at, and I think I guess he's finally kind of found his niche, which is great.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's what it does. It takes people a while to figure out what they really, want to do or where things are going.
That's true, and he's young. He's a kid.
Well, he's not as young as he used to be, but he's a heck of a lot younger than you or I. So I guess he still qualifies as young.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably 30 now.
Oh, well, he's over 30. He's got to be over 30.
35.
He was. I mean, yeah. I mean,
you're probably right. It's probably 35. But he was 25.
He was closing in on 30 when he was working for us. So he could be.
Because he was 25 in 2011.
So he's 36.
Yeah. Well, his birthday's not till July, so he's probably still 35.
Yeah, I haven't seen him for a long time, but that's what happens these days. And people, they move to Virginia, they move somewhere else, and you just never see them again. And COVID hits, and then no one's seeing anybody, and then trying to put all that back together. Yeah, so.
A couple of weeks ago, we talked about gas prices and the gas moratorium here in Maryland. But when I was driving down to Virginia, the prices down there, I don't think they have a moratorium or anything, but the prices down there were about 30 cents cheaper than what they are in Maryland. So I don't know. I don't think they're really.
Yeah, no, you're right. They tend to be. I think they do tend to be cheaper, Jeff. And and they've been fighting in Virginia, about suspending the gas tax because Youngkin wanted it done for like 90 days, and the legislature pushed back.
By the way, this is as of yesterday. The average price in Montgomery County is $4.81, $4.71, up 8 cents from the day before, and up 5 cents.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, so what's the source that you're using? I mean, there's so many different. AAA. I'm using AAA. Yeah, I mean, it's just. I mean, look, I'm driving around up here this morning, and so I'm at the gym very early, and then Young wanted me to go get something over at Giant, so I ran over there. So, I'm driving by the high-priced Exxon, which was still at like $4.99, but I guess it would have been $4.89 a couple of days before that. The Liberty was at $4.85.
Hey, when people go to
I drove over to Costco this afternoon because I needed to get some milk and stuff. And I drove by, and that Exxon and that Liberty were another 10 cents. So it is now for me. I know you've already seen it down in your neck of the woods or in your travels, Dwight. But now for me, it's the first station in the universe that I drive through in Montgomery County where the price is now over $5 a gallon for regular gas. So
that's crazy.
It's just a little bit of a little shell shock to see. And then you see, for them, the diesel is now, they pushed that 10 cents up. So now at that Exxon, it's 6.09. And I'm like, you're killing people. I mean, how, I thought my wife was kind of joking about giving up a car or doing something like that and going down to one car. And I'm like, nah, we don't need to do that. But, as prices keep pushing up, we don't drive either car that often, but it's convenient for us to have our separate cars. Yeah. We have to be in two different places. But now I'm thinking like, I don't know, it's like this keeps going like this. And I'm not sure it's worth paying the gas and the extra insurance to keep a second car around.
See, this is why I hate our energy department, because, for a while we were all into like, how do we make ethanol? Part of it was a corn subsidy to the farmers and stuff, but, how do we make ethanol to help with, gasoline prices? And it's a complicated and expensive process to make ethanol. But on the other hand, getting diesel to convert to like biodiesel is not that big a deal. And we have enough, we could do that probably much more easier than ethanol, because biodiesel, you can make that from a variety of products. I mean, almost any kind of oil can be turned.
People burn their houses down trying to make biodiesel too.
So, and again, this is stuff we could be doing, but instead, we're not. And, I've said before, and I'll say again, I think energy is one of the issues that is really hurting this country. And we've just kind of sat on our butts for so long, just assuming that the problem would solve itself. And of course, we've pushed for some things. Some administrations have pushed for solar or stuff like that. But, we've said before, it's just not. You could.
Some administration said
solar or wind power.
Put a sweater on.
Sorry?
I said some administration said put a sweater on.
That's right.
The point is that we really do have, and it's not really an energy crisis in terms of like energy, but it kind of, the thing is, you talk about desalination. If we had an excess of energy, then desalination would not be a big deal, because it takes a lot of energy to do that en masse.
Oh, absolutely. Just ask the Saudis. Yeah.
And we could solve the water crisis. We could use that if, again, I mentioned before about, some of the next gen molten salt reactors. Those are run at a lot higher temperatures than normal reactors. And with that, there's a process we can actually, take carbon from the atmosphere and make methane from that. And from methane, you can create more complicated hydrocarbons. And so you could, in fact, do that from create fuel from atmosphere. So it wouldn't be necessarily, wouldn't even be carbon neutral. It'd be like negative carbon. So again, there are solutions, but the problem is that nobody really has, for whatever reason, nobody's really pushing on this. They're all trying to blame someone and saying, well, if we had a better pipeline, or if we had better, again, I'm not against fracking or oil, drilling.
And Jeff, here, that's a great jumping off point. Let me share this. Oldie but goodie talked about our friends, the Democrats, and their energy policies. This goes back to 1979. Not much has changed, as you'll see. Hold on a second.
Dwayne and Garth thing.
Yeah.
Congressman, I think we're running out of gas.
Oh, no. It's not as if the Democrat Congress didn't have a warning. The last 3 presidents warned them.
Congressman, we are running out of gas.
But the Democrats, who have controlled Congress for 25 years, ignored them. They just went blindly down the road.
Hey, we're out of gas!
The Democrats are out of gas. Vote Republican for a change.
And that has been the Democrats' policy on energy. It hasn't changed much, frankly. And I think that is one of the biggest problems we have right now. You have an administration that comes in on day one. They decide to end the pipeline. They decide to, stop drilling, no more, and we were energy independent prior to this guy. I mean, it is really, really, I mean, here's the thing. We can all pretty much afford to keep taking these hits to a limit for these high price of gas. But let me tell you, the people that the Democrats claim they champion, the working poor, the McDonald's workers and the supermarket workers, something, they can't afford $4 gas. They can't afford $5 gas, frankly. You got people that are making $15 an hour. They don't make enough money to pay for a full tank of gas. That is the problem.
Do you notice, Dwight? Do you see this, or Jeff? Do you see this on social media and in your feeds? One thing I've noticed is that as people post they vent about gas prices. One thing I've noticed is a lot of them are when they post a copy of their receipt, they say half tank of gas, which used to be a full tank of gas for a lot of them. Some of them, I think a lot of this is also saying gas is so expensive, I can't even fill up my tank really anymore. I can only get half a tank, as on my now. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, for me to think that, and Jeff, you're on the road a lot. You drive, you're a lot of miles and spending a lot of money on gas, I assume. But I'm just thinking about the 700-mile trip I'm going to be taking in about just under 2 months, to go. My daughter has her 6th child. I'm like, that's a 700-mile trip. We might, with our car, anything like that, I guess we would use 30 gallons of gas at 5, somewhere maybe 25, just depends, but we, and so I wouldn't have spent more than 75 or $85 before. It looks like it's going to cost me $150 or more.
Actually,
maybe
let's do this, Don.
At least 100, yeah, between 100 to 150, depending on my MPG and gas prices.
Yeah.
I was going for 30 MPG.
Part of the problem
gas.
about when you go from here to there is that we've got to go through the mountains of West Virginia and Western Maryland.
Oh.
Not great for gas mileage.
Are you taking what year's your Lexus, Don?
It's 2017 ES 350.
Okay. Our good friends at AAA. Wrong car. There you go. Our good friends at AAA, I can plug in. I mean, it's an ES350, you said?
Yeah.
And okay, yeah. Okay, now I'm going to calculate do the calculations from today's prices, which is the national average being 476. Oh, you're going to Indiana, aren't you?
Yeah, so it's going to be about 700 miles to Evansville.
Yeah, I'd estimate around 120, 125 is kind of my rough ball estimate.
Well, Don, round trip's going to be $371.54 if you go today. It's still cheaper than an airline ticket.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, as far as that goes, it takes, because Evansville in particular is so small, that you have to fly from like Evansville to Charlotte, and then back up here. I mean, the amount of time you spend in the airport and then traveling and waiting for your plane, your next plane, and things like this, it takes almost as long to do that trip by air than it does when you just go ahead and drive.
Yeah. I tell you, when I had to fly to Florida, right, when I flew back, and I flew from Orlando to Atlanta. Then Atlanta, I had a layover there. It took me longer. It took me roughly about, it didn't take me, I would not have been home quicker if I drove, but it felt like, then there was a delay in Atlanta, so I didn't get home till around 1 a.m. from Florida when I went there. And and the Atlanta airport, I tell you, when I was there on a Sunday, it was like there was nothing open except the Chick-fil-A and something else, which was like, I think Panda Express or something similar to that. And there was the overpriced airport stores. And I go to Chick-fil-A and the milkshake machine is not working. How about you guys put up a sign that your milkshake machine is not working? Some people wouldn't wait in the lines that long to find out, you know. But,
Why the arches that have this.
I know it's just a horrible airport. Atlanta Hartsfield is the worst airport I've ever been in.
So isn't it like one of the busiest in the world or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the Delta hub. Last time I was there was a couple years ago, but they were doing major renovations on it. And for good or ill, it was one of the few airports that actually had like a areas you could smoke. They had actually rooms where you could go in and smoke. And they've done away with that too, which, I mean, again, I'm not saying smoking is good, but it was kind of nice for people because enough people smoked that they wanted to be able to, you know, use that. And Atlanta actually had an airport that had that. It had, you know, several of those rooms. And it was one of the few airports, like I said, that had that.
And the other advantage is there's a hotel connected to the airport, which now it's becoming more and more
Some of them
common.
have that. I think LA.
Yeah, now it's becoming more and more common. Like Orlando is connected to the.
You got Orlando. You can do that, and I think you can do that in Houston too.
Yeah, and what I like about that feature is, one, you don't have to rent a car unless you're going somewhere, you know. But you can always take a cab or nowadays Ubers or Lyfts, you know. But that's what I like about it. But there's
also a premium there too. I mean, if you look at the prices of staying there, they're not
I know.
It's a free thing. It's quite a
true.
bit more.
True.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a reason. I mean, you're paying for all that convenience of being, you know, right close to the airport, plus close to shopping and everything else like that. So. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, from years ago, from having, you know, when I used to travel anywhere between 30 to 50,000 miles a year on the air, and now I barely travel. I don't even want to get on a plane if I don't have to, just because I don't know when I even book the original flight whether or not that flight's going to be the flight I'm going to be on, and when everything else.
Yep.
I mean, look at all the cancellations that are taking place like every day. I mean, TSA's now, you know, their checkpoints are hitting. They've been hitting, you know, the 2 million mark, which is right very close, you know, to where it was pre-pandemic. So, you know, air travel has returned that way, but the staffing problems have, you know, are worse. So, you know, their flights, because they don't have enough crew.
And you know, Don, that's kind of, here's something funny. It's harder for you to get on an airplane at Reagan National than it is for you to cross in from Mexico. Think about that for a minute. We take our shoes off. You get groped by the TSA. You, you know, put your shoes back on. You finally get to the gate.
Pay for pre-check.
Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I mean, I was in Puerto Vallarta before, so I flew into Mexico City and then flew back, and I had to go through. I mean, that obviously.
No, I'm talking about the border, Jeff. I'm talking about how people.
Well, you didn't fly. I mean, I don't. Okay, I've never crossed the border like at Tijuana, so I don't know how that is. But
you know, it's funny.
I used to cross the border all the time in Michigan, and there it was pretty easy initially, but they have cracked down on that too. I mean, initially you could just have your driver's license and say I'm just going for a weekend trip to, you know, Niagara or something like that. They'll just let you through, no problem. But then they've changed it so that you have to have a passport or an enhanced ID. And then they're being more scrupulous as far as, like, you know, what are you actually doing? And, you know,
are you bringing fuel for those truckers?
Worse on the American side than it is on the Canadian side. Canadians don't care as much, but going back to, you know, the American side, you do get drilled, and a lot of times you get your car searched.
I mean,
I'll throw this in too, Jeff. So the Yankees are playing. I think it's the Yankees. They're playing the Blue Jays. You know, and Canada's got those strict COVID policies. So they've got like 4 players that haven't had their vaccinations, and so they're going to be out the entire series. They won't be able. They're like 4 players. They won't be able. They can't go with the team. They can't enter the country.
No.
Only if Baltimore had that, they could keep the Yankees' key players from being able to hit. So it makes it more competitive when they play the Orioles.
The Orioles, you know, the Orioles are just
they got the Yankees number. They also have the Red Sox number this year.
Yeah. I mean, the Red Sox aren't as good, but the Yankees are good this year. The Yankees are doing better against them this year than they did last year. So we'll wait and see how this all turns out. It's still early. We're only like a third of the way through the season.
Yeah, no, we're not even at the All-Star break yet. The Orioles could blow out the second half and just run the tables and
Yeah, well, that's not really
finish it at a 50-50 season.
But Dwight's always the eternal optimist, so whatever.
Yeah, but you notice I said, and they'll finish with a 50-50, a 500 season.
Look, they get any look. The Orioles get anywhere close to 500, it'll be a miracle. I mean, if they win 70 games, that'll be a major achievement for them out of 162.
Small victories.
Yeah, no, I mean they're doing better than the Nationals because the Nationals decimated their team. And
Every win's magical.
Yeah, I guess for you, I mean, the fans have got something worth cheering about this year. At least, they've got a much more competitive team this year than they have in the past. They're not, they're either going to finish next to last or last in the division, all likelihood, but still a better product than they had put on the field for the last several years.
But I don't think they're not going to be the worst team in MLB, though. They're not going to be the worst of the worst.
No, and they're not.
I think that's probably going to.
The Kansas City Royals are the worst team in baseball, followed very closely by the Washington Nationals and the Cincinnati Reds. So,
see, we'll be the fourth from the bottom.
I think it'll even be better than that because I think even after that, the Tigers are almost as bad as the rest of these guys. So, but some of these teams have got more hope than others. I wish the Nationals would do better, but when they dismantled their team, a year ago, the cupboard was bare. They don't have any. They have no really good young talent coming up, and so you've got a bunch of people plugged in there that they just are generally terrible. That's you got a couple of stars in there, but it's hard to carry a team by yourself. When you don't have even any decent players around you. So,
speaking of decent players, do you think Vladimir Putin's thinking I have no decent soldiers, generals around him? Day 100.
So we're at today's day 100, right? And I'll say if there's anything I got to say about all of this, is just that Ukraine. I mean, for the fact that they have lasted this long, the advantages are there for them. Even though Russia has been, they just keep grinding it out. But you kind of wonder, when Putin comes out and he kind of berates and criticizes the West for providing, material to Ukraine to fight against them, is like, to me, that's a signal like, I was supposed to win this war in about 2 or 3 days, maybe 5 days, whatever. It's gone on to 100 days. If you guys hadn't gotten involved, we probably would have been able to do it. But the Ukrainian forces, we trained them, right? We were a large part of how we trained them. The Russian forces are terrible. And a lot of, when the forces find out that there really are no, Nazis in Ukraine running things and threatening Russia, they're like, why were we here?
There's I still want to get these bumper stickers made up and send them to the Russian embassy in Washington. Ukraine, Cyrillic for Afghanistan. It's a quagmire. They're in a quagmire. Let's call it a quagmire. They're stuck. They are, they basically, if we gave the Ukraine some offensive weapons, I could see them actually take some strikes and taking out some of their oil depots and so on in Russia.
Well, I mean, we're not providing any troops, right? We're providing just army, right? Just we're giving them.
Lend-Lease. It's kind of like Lend-Lease when FDR gave, ships and destroyers for bases to Winston Churchill during World War II. It's just like that. That's all we're doing. It's a Lend-Lease. We're just, it's like our neighbor has a house that's on fire, so we're loaning him a garden hose.
Yeah, and it's so far. I mean, it has largely staved off the Russians, but and I understand the implications that if we went ahead and started sending our troops there to fight against Russia, what the ramifications there would be. But boy, I mean, if we did that, if other NATO countries jumped into Ukraine and supplied troops in addition to the weaponry that they provided, Russia would be doomed.
And I tell you, what is Russia going to do now that Finland has applied for NATO membership? What are NATO
Well, Finland's not a Baltic nation, so I don't know if that really affects them.
no, but see, they do share a border, and that's the
It's like
Russians.
830. Was it 830 miles or something?
Yeah, yeah. And that was Putin's big thing about Ukraine joining NATO, and he didn't want to have the West on his doorstep, So what's he going to do? Is he going to invade Finland next? Good luck with that. Just ask Napoleon how those harsh winters work out for you.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, Finland, they've stayed on the sidelines. They had that shared border, and they're like, they weren't going to antagonize Russia before, but this act of naked aggression by Putin, they're looking at it and they're like, what are these guys doing? I mean, they lied to their people as to why they were going in there,
Yes.
and they provided this threat. So I mean, even Finland's saying like, look, okay, we need to protect ourselves, and we could be next because, I mean, Putin is acting, irrationally on all of this. So, why not go ahead and join with the West here on this and form, I mean, the EU is definitely squeezing Russia, right? I mean, with all the sanctions and everything like that, they keep, throwing more things out there to tighten economic sanctions on them. It's going to create a problem the longer this goes on. How does Putin finance this thing?
I was going to say, I thought Putin though was kind of just more of like a nationalist, so he wanted to like regain the the USSR's kind of former glory of like all the different nation states. I mean, I don't assume they have any interest in Finland.
He's like Kylo Ren. He wants to reconstitute the empire.
Yeah, I don't think that he necessarily has any. I think any interest in any other countries. I think it is. I have definitely believed from the start that this is, the USSR is something that he would love to see reunite and reestablish and everything like that. But I think it does just kind of this strike that he's had here in Ukraine and everything that they've done, killing the civilians and not really caring about this. I think it's just kind of made Finland think, maybe he doesn't really want to, we don't necessarily believe he'll come and get us, but the fact that he just went into Ukraine like that worries us. So let's go ahead and just make sure we're protected on our backside here a little bit. Nobody's really sure exactly what's going through Putin's mind, right? We can't read his mind, and then there was those reports that he might have been really ill and stuff like that, and which would have been, if that was true, that would be definitely a blow to them, from a PR standpoint too, because hasn't Putin been the shirtless guy supposed to be strong and virile and everything at the age of 70?
Do you think he's got COVID like Prince Philip and the Archbishop of Canterbury? Not Prince Philip. Who's the other prince? Not Andrew, but the other kid, not Charles, the youngest one. He's got COVID, evidently. I don't know. One of the prince.
What do you mean? One of Diana's? Her
Yeah,
son?
it's one of Elizabeth's. One of Queen Elizabeth's, because she had 3 sons. It's the youngest one. The one that works. They actually mentioned what his profession was. But basically the Archbishop of Canterbury has COVID. That's why they had the Archbishop of London do the ceremonies this morning for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. And since Fox News is doing, I'd like to say gavel to gavel coverage of but I guess it's bell to bell coverage of the court of the Jubilee. Funniest thing is, I think it was Piers Morgan who was anchoring the show with 2 other people. And he makes a funny comment. The Queen also knows this is going to be her last Jubilee, because she is, after all, 96 years old.
It's pretty amazing. I mean, to think that, she's
70 years.
70 years? I mean,
yeah.
She
was also really young. I mean, she was 24 when she became queen?
Yeah, she was very young. She was in Kenya when she got word that her father had died and everything like that. But, who would have ever imagined that she would have lasted this long? And I think in general she is, I mean, why would she hate? What's there to really hate about the Queen? I mean, it's
exactly. And I'll tell you, I mean, there was a lot of hate for the Queen out on social media. It's like, for crying out loud. I mean, it went from she's got so much blood on her hand of all these other people. And it's funny, they were telling a story about Prince Philip, the Queen's husband, when the Queen and Prince Philip came to Washington. President Reagan was there, and there was a African American butler that worked in the Reagan White House, where he said, "Sir, would you like a drink?" And he says, "Only if you'll drink with me." And he goes, "Sir," So basically, Prince Philip had a drink, So these are not racist people, as it's like, just because the spoiled brat prince and princess, Kate Middleton and Prince Harry, or as the Simpsons prophecy calls him, Bloody Harry, just because they make all these allegations and so on, doesn't mean they're true. What's funny is it's so easy to say stuff, and it's hard to, it's like, and once it's set out there, the woke people all glom on before it's kind of like, if you think about it, like a police shooting, right? Everybody gloms on and says, police brutality. Then when when it's discovered that, no, this was not police brutality, it was within, the realms of law enforcement. Nobody covers the fact that, where's the coverage now? You basically tarred and feathered the person's name. There's no, when something is disproven, they just don't bother covering that stuff. It's kind of like what our friend Mike Deaver said. Which room do they go to get their reputations back? They did that with, But no, I mean, I was just amazed. And as I'll tell you, I like making memes and stuff like that. And here's a meme I created, which I thought was a fun meme. And that is the Chancellor of the Klingon Empire. And I posted on the Star Trek memes page. And it's basically congratulating. At first people really thought it was really funny. And people were talking about, how the Klingon sent barrels of blood wine and so on. And the Klingon ambassador created a faux pas by preferring tea and crumpets to blood wine, and how Klingons prefer fish and chips, and they were disappointed, and so on. But then you get all of a sudden these people that hate the Queen, hate the royals. Somebody made a comment, when one royal dies, 2 Republicans are born. I'm like, this is not even political. They are politicizing things. I believe the Queen and the royals are very lefty of center people. I mean, look at Prince Hippie Charles, who preaches about global climate change and all this other stuff. They're not conservatives. I mean, and in one of the comments I did mention Margaret Thatcher. That's kind of was the thing that basically drove the Queen haters into a tailspin.
So I'd say that the royal family is probably, politically conservative, socially probably a little more liberal. But again, I mean, they're mostly showpieces. I mean, I'm not any shade on it. It's just that, the Parliament is what the action is as far as the rules. The Queen doesn't really make the rules in the UK. It's the Great Britain. It's Parliament, but she has a role to play, and whether or not people like that or not. I mean, I don't know. I mean, for one time, people were all about the Queen, and like when Prince Diana was around, these are big things. I mean, people love celebrities. They love royalty. I think the Queen has been nothing but generous in her dealings with people, but but maybe to use a catchphrase, maybe not everyone's cup of tea, but it's but still she serves a purpose for the government, and she's like in a sense is like the president of the United States. The president has some power, but not unlimited power. He's kind of the the showpiece for the U.S. He sets policies, he sets orders, and he sets.
But the Queen doesn't even. The Queen, I don't even think has that kind. The Queen is more like, she's there. She dissolves Parliament and she opens Parliament. She is.
There's a lot of ceremonial stuff that the Queen does.
Yeah.
And as Jeff said, I mean, it's Parliament. And it's the Prime Minister that has, they have the real power and everything like that. For us, the president, when the president says something and things like that, it definitely it carries much more weight than say what the Queen does. you know.
Yeah.
But royal watching and all that stuff, that's a big deal in Britain. The Great Britain spends an enormous amount of money on the royal family.
Yeah.
But there is a fascination to it. I mean,
And here's the thing: they are also a tourist attraction. I don't know if you guys,
absolutely.
I don't know if you guys know who Lawrence Welk was, but Lawrence Welk was actually was a California, listed as a California landmark. And only reason I know this is because I looked it up. There's a funny episode of Here's Lucy where her friend Vivian, who's Ethel Mertz from the previous series, comes to visit her in California. And Lucy in her Lucy fashion is telling her how she hangs out with Lawrence Welk and so on, right? And she goes, but Lawrence Welk won't come to her house. Then the kids go and they go, well, and that's where he goes, well, as the fifth most tourist attraction in California, it's my duty to come and entertain. But I mean, people do flock to England every year, to see the changing of the guard, the Queen. I mean, you take the Queen away, what do you have?
Yeah, I mean, I did
Well,
that.
so, there's a lot of history there. I mean, besides Buckingham Palace, I mean, you've got Big Ben, you've got whatever the big Ferris wheel is called, I forget. But I mean, there's a lot of things there to visit besides just the fact that there's just like the old country, and the UK. I mean, I'm not sure what the term is, whether it's UK.
I could go to Busch Gardens, by the way, and see all that stuff there too.
But Scotland, Ireland, Isle of Man. There's a lot of places there that are just interesting places to visit. Stonehenge. There's just a lot of cool places there. So yeah, I mean, part of it I think is the fascination of seeing, the city and seeing London and seeing, because so much has been around there. It's kind of like other people's fascination with New York City. I mean, people who live in the area probably don't think it's a big deal, but Times Square, that's like so many people have heard about it but never seen it. That it has that fascination.
Well, it's like Washington D.C. is for us. Everyone in Iowa has gone to see the Capitol building, but I'm willing to bet. Actually, I met a guy when I was doing Ray's book in Baltimore County. He was telling me, he goes, I keep telling Ray to take me to Washington. I've never been there. And I'm thinking, like, you've got a functioning automobile. You do have a driver's license. Yes, you do like to start drinking at 8:30 in the morning, but I'm sure you know how to read a map and you can make it to Washington on your own. You don't need. It's kind of like when, like my grandmother used to say, your granddad never takes me anywhere, and he never takes me into the city. I'm like, Grandma, you can go yourself. You do drive, and you can. She goes, everyone's gone. And I'm like, it was just funny.
Hey, so let's spend a few minutes because Jeff brought something up through our email chat. This USDA non-discrimination memorandum. So Jeff, you want to talk about that briefly? Kind of introduce that.
Yeah, sure. So let me see if I have my notes here. But it was interesting because it's kind of hit the social media, and I get my news mostly from my social media sources. I don't really watch TV, but that's the thing that kind of was hitting the news. And it was like, I had a friend ask me, it's like, okay, what's the deal with this? Because all we're seeing is all these crazy, like this South Dakota Governor Noem, basically is threatening to sue over this. And what it's saying is that, so just as an overview, I'm not trying to color this at all, but Biden has an executive order out to basically for all government agencies to end segregation based upon gender identity and sexual preferences. So obviously we already have non-discriminatory laws based upon race, gender, and those kind of things. He's extending it towards sexual identity and whatever. So agree with it or not, that was back in last year. There was also a court case. I think Bowdoin was the court case, which basically says that if an employer, fires you because of your affinities, that's tied to your sexual, class. So that, for example, you wouldn't be considered gay if you were the opposite sex. So it's tied direct to your sexual orientation. So they basically said that you can't discriminate. Any discrimination of sex would include any of the kind of transgendered or other types of qualifiers you put on there. So that court ruling has occurred, and the USDA basically said, okay, we're going to apply this court ruling to funding. And so I've read the actual briefs and the memorandums of the USDA. They're basically saying that they want to make sure that LGBTQ I'm sure what all the things are, that those students are not segregated and they're not like what's the right word? There's no like prejudice.
There's not the lunch program, isn't it?
Right. So what it is that the USDA provides the school lunch program. They provide funding for that. They provide funding for SNAP, and they provide Title IX funding for schools. So what the thing is they're basically saying, and this it's not laid out like this, but they provide funding, and if a school or organization is segregating or causing there to be bias based upon a person's sexual orientation, then that needs to be looked at. Basically what USDA is saying, you've got to investigate that, and based upon how you handle it, if there's a complaint, we have a process to resolve that. But worst case, the USDA could cancel funding for either the school lunch program or it's not SNAP because that's individuals, or Title IX funding for schools. So I mean, it sounds bad. I mean, I'm not. The thing is, like Hannity at Fox is talking about it, and it's kind of blowing up there. And I understand that it's a hot topic issue. It's certainly something that is being very polarized because again, it's if you don't like to see the stuff pushed forward, this is really the government kind of pushing now on schools, public schools. There's still the religious exemption for schools. So if you have a religious objection to the ruling, you can still claim that. But for public schools, it is kind of pushing that they need to be they need to treat these other classes of individuals equally. And of course, you'd kind of jump towards things like, okay, well, what about athletic events and what about activities like that and those kind of things. And again, I read the USDA report about activities and those kind of things. And what it basically says is that for contact sports, there's already exclusions for it. So they don't necessarily say you have to have like boys and girls wrestling teams. But for other teams that are non-contact, like track and field or other kind of things like that, the existing rule is basically that if you're going to have a men's team, you've got to have equal funding for a girls' team. It doesn't say anything about you've got to have like people who identify as men be on the men's team, or people who identify as women be on the women's team. You could, in theory, have like a team for transgender people as long as it's not, restrictive. I mean, like you don't give them less funding or give them less opportunities. So I don't know. It's I'm not saying it's not a big deal, but I think it's kind of blowing up in a way that is becoming kind of hyperbolic in terms of people are certainly taking the most extreme edge case of this and saying if this happens, the government's going to push this. But then again, I mean, that's kind of what people do. But I'm curious you guys' thoughts as well.
See, I think why is the government causing problems where there are none, frankly? I mean, this is one of those things. Why don't you wait till something actually happens before you decide to do these blanket things? Because, I hate to say it, people will do stuff where they get mad at the school or whatever. They'll say it's the government's. This is a bridge too far. Well, one of the many bridges too far for the federal government overreach. Education, all this stuff. I'm sorry. You have no say. I know this. You have no say in what happens in schools. Frankly, it's like don't push your Upper East Side Manhattan values on Iowa high schools. Frankly, this is what that is. This is all that is. It's basically you're pushing New England values in Middle America. And that's what this is all about.
Okay, I'm just curious because again, on the face of it, it's all about non-discrimination. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you've got to have like gender-neutral bathrooms or those kind of things. It's just saying that they don't want to see people discriminated upon. We had issues always with race discrimination and perhaps sexual discrimination, but this is just basically saying we're extending this towards also sexual orientation. I don't know how bad this really is. I mean, we have to see it kind of play out in my estimation, but. In principle, I'm all for non-discrimination, letting people kind of not be threatened or bullied based upon how they identify or those kind of things. So I don't, I don't personally think that's a place that I would go. But again, I tend to be very, like live and let live when it comes to those kind of things, because a lot of students initially, are trying to figure out who they are. And so I understand there's a lot of, back when I was a kid, like being goth was a thing, and like, people didn't understand the goths, and, and like punk was a phase where people wanted to be punk because it was trying to be rebels. So I think part of it is this: people want to try something. They want to be like different in a way that is like empowering. So I'm not saying this is good or bad.
They want attention, Jeff. That's all it is. They just want their attention.
Again, I'm being legitimately, curious here. I'm not trying to color it. I'm just saying, obviously this is something where it's going to affect a lot of schools potentially and their policies, but I'm not sure if it's all bad, because again, part of it is saying just, if somebody wants to say identify as a certain person, that you shouldn't, again,
and here's the thing. Yeah, but my issue is this, Jeff. Schools are for education, right? Reading, writing, arithmetic. Why do we need this stuff? Should be happening. These types of discussions and all these things should be happening at the home. Like right now, this is part of the broader picture of the over sexualization of preschoolers and kindergartners. Got news for you: kindergartners are not allowed to stay in their homes without adult supervision. They're not allowed to cross the street. Well, at least for good parents, they'll say, they're not allowed to be outside without their parents nearby. They're not allowed to walk around the neighborhood by themselves. Just ask that couple in Sorcery that free range.
It's not about teaching, a certain lifestyle.
No, my point is this: these kids don't. Here's the thing. This is just, okay. These kids have no idea about gender. Frankly, they don't need to teach them gender studies in kindergarten.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just don't think that this is not what this is. This is just basically saying that,
But see, I think that's just I think it's a step in that direction, Jeff. It's kind of like that, I hate to say it, and if Peter Barber is watching, he'll probably say that's what I've been saying all these years. But it's kind of like, if you remember back in the 90s, all they wanted to do, the gays just wanted to serve their country and die for their country like everyone else. And I said it then. I go, this is just step one of the big, broader picture. And look where we are now. And now you have the inner fightings amongst the LGB and the T and Qs don't like each other. There's something. What is it? There's infighting amongst them too, from what I understand.
What I see with this policy really, though, is just that this is the Biden administration effort to try to blunt the effect of all the states, mostly Republican states, where they have basically banned transgender youth from sports programs. If you were born a male, you cannot, even if you transition or whatever, it doesn't matter. You cannot go, and participate as a sport in your newly identified sex. There's been all that controversy over the girls and boys, and we've got that Leah Thomas. He was a boy. He's now, and he's going
to try for the U.S. Olympic teams now.
We had the kid up in Connecticut who set all kinds of running records and beat the incumbent state champ or whatever. Inherently an advantage, even though they'd gone through hormone therapy and all these things, they still had inherent advantages over a naturally born female. So does the school lunch program really have anything to do with, quote, inclusivity or the gender or the bathroom policy? No, but this is to me, this is a little bit of desperation on part of administration, saying we don't know how to stop this train. So this is what we're going to use our ability to threaten states and these schools on this funding for something that has zero bearing on the issue at hand, just to try to force their hand to see if they won't change their policies. I did see an interview this morning on CNN with a woman from Time Magazine, and I guess she had written an article about these transgender sports bans and things like that. and her complaint was is that, you know, she claimed, and I don't know if this is the case, but she's probably not that far off the mark, that there really aren't a lot of kids participating at this level yet. So, you know, solution in search of a problem kind of thing, whatever, you know. And I'm like, look, you know, to me, the fact that we've got a few of them now, just because there may only be a handful of kids in, you know, in some areas that are now participating and, you know, now creating new records for girls sports and whatever, doesn't mean that it's not something that isn't potentially needed, that this is going to explode, you know.
So let me say too, because I agree with you. But let me say, I don't, and again, I tend to be very more liberal on these kind of things, but this is how I feel, is that you can say identify as a woman or identify as a man. That doesn't make you that. So if somebody says, you know, I'm a female, you could dispute that, you know, even though they may identify as that. So I guess what I'm saying is that, for example, you know, if people really want to participate in a sport, a lot of these, like, again, the non-contact sports like track and field, a lot of them have like mixed men and women in the same, you know, same coach. They just, for the competitions, they'll be like, okay, you know, women place this way, men place this way. If you said, okay, you know, here's a category of people who identify as whatever, just leave it at that. Don't even say, okay, you know, don't say, you know, because again, part of the argument is that we're non-binary. It's like, you know, we have as many sexes as we have, you know, types of animals. But the point of it is that if you want to, you know, identify as a whatever, then just, okay, you know, so-and-so Billy the Unicorn placed 5th or something.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I don't want any discrimination of any kind. Okay. I mean, I you know, and to me, look, if they want to have the boy sports, the girl sports, and like the other category, fine. Okay. Throw all the non-binaries and transgenders and whatever in there. That's fine. I don't really care about that. You know, it's just that, you know, if my kids, you know, if I was still a parent of, you know, school-age children, you know, and I had a daughter who participated in some sports, you know, when she was in high school, but all of a sudden, you know, if some boy had, you know, transitioned and had all of a sudden, you know, become like the #1 tennis player on the team or whatever, the top scorer on the lacrosse team, you know, and just was ringing the table throughout the county, that's a problem for me, because there just seems like an unfair advantage. But, you know, if they want to do something on their own, I don't really care. I mean, you know, we've really gone into this kind of crazy world where we're having identify as this, identify as that. I mean, I can't make sense of it. I mean, we have New York State is saying, you know, you can now put like X down, you know, right on your license. Oh, where are we going?
Is that because they're mutants?
I'm not justifying the craziness of it. I'm just saying, okay.
But
like,
hey, Don, isn't the X so they go to the Xavier school and they're X-Men?
We've had people like dress and drag for like ever, and it's been kind of, you know, I had like what was it? I mean, some of the, you know, Patrick Swayze dress and drag. So I mean, it's like, and of course you're talking about. I was thinking Dwight,
Flip Wilson,
like, you know, yelling at the movie theater. I was thinking about the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I mean, you're supposed to yell at the theater for that, and that's all about, you know, transsexual transvestites from Transylvania. You know, so obviously we've had this kind of, you know, in our culture for a while, but again, I'm just trying to, you know, bridge this a little bit, because I feel like, you know, I understand a lot of kids are struggling with this, and you know, whether or not you feel that, you know, this should be a thing or shouldn't be a thing, it is a thing. I mean, kids do struggle with this, and you know, they don't know how to necessarily deal with that. So I understand that there are issues there, and again, for whatever reason, I mean, kids tend to struggle with their sexual identity. And again, I'm not saying I'm going to answer for that. I'm just saying that, you know, while they try to figure this stuff out, you know, I think we can be kind of gracious and help them, you know, by not like prejudging them. And again, the only thing I'm saying is that, like I said, you know, if they want to call themselves whatever, let them do so. Let them be inclusive, but give them a way to do it, which isn't, you know, to your point, Don. You know, I don't want to see men dressed as women in women's sports and women dressed as men in men's sports. I mean, what would be the WNBA if it was all men dressed as women? It'd just be the NBA again. So again, I understand that there are specific hormonal differences and bodily differences between men and women. I don't dispute that at all. But if we want to have a I don't know. I mean, again, I'm probably just spitballing here,
Well, I
but
mean,
I kind of feel like
I just think that the Biden administration. I mean, I think this is a shameful behavior on their part, because to me, it's like they're throwing a cudgel here and going. They're really, in essence, going to. And this is a threat to hold the kids in the school lunch program. Many who are poverty, levels. I mean, they need the school lunch program. They need these meals, these subsidized meals.
Mhm.
And you're going to make them, kind of your poster boy or your pawn to push this agenda, which has nothing to do with the school lunch program. I mean, they're mixing this all up because they lost legislatively in the states, and if you don't, if you've got a problem, I don't know. This is like all these other things. At this point, it's like in this country, we are unfortunately extremely divided. But if you don't like the policy in that state for the school sports, then maybe think about moving to another state where you like it better or whatever, or something. It's like nobody's forcing you to be there and to do that. Go to where you are. I mean, look what all these Californians and things like that. I mean, they move into Arizona and all these states. And they are changing the politics in a lot of these states. The red states are less red in some places because of this migration going on there. So,
well, I tell you, yeah, and I mean that's the big migration thing, because I know, because we deal with folks at the various places, but there's people in Alabama who don't like city slickers moving down there. Frankly. They go, you guys drive too fast, drive too slow, and you bring your big city values, and we don't want that. You're trying to change who we are, And
I'm going to live my life, and I have my moral compass, my values, my beliefs, and whatever. Mm-hmm. Do I like the politics in Maryland? Do I like what the state legislature does for the most part? Absolutely not. But I do love the state of Maryland. I'm not going to be.
It is home.
It is home to me, and I have, I will.
You and I both born and raised here, Jeff too, actually.
And stuff like that. But I'm not going to move, but that's my choice. But there are a lot of people who are trying to weaponize these things, and I think that's kind of what's happening here with the school lunch program. Is that Biden administration is in essence trying to weaponize this as a way to try to get their viewpoint. And
I'm trying to take a very uncolored view of this. It may be that there's motive behind this. I don't want to prejudge it because again I'm trying to be as neutral as possible.
Yeah, but I just it's just that if there was a relationship between the school lunch program and transgender sports and use of bathrooms, yeah, but it just seems like you're talking. It's like you've got very disparate things here that you're trying to throw under one umbrella. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's if they're doing this seems to me more of something they could potentially throw under, Title IX or something like that. Make a more of a Title IX complaint or something.
Well, that is what it is. It's the Title IX, which has to do with the activities. I don't think that the SNAP and the school lunch program are affected by this.
They're fighting it with the wrong thing. I mean, if they're really only going to make true progress and get some support, I think really, and it only makes sense for them to use a Title IX, defense of some sort, argument to make this case. The school lunch things, like, it doesn't fit. Yeah, but this is politics. I mean, I think both parties do a little bit of this anyway. So hey,
yeah. And like I said, it's I've read the USDA and also the sections, I think 7, which talks about all the different complaints and stuff. It's all legalese, so it's really hard to kind of sort through the details to know where the teeth are.
Big surprise.
Right, but the thing is that it seems to be mostly the fact that the point of it is again segregation and non-discrimination. So when it comes to like the actual what happens if a school actually does discriminate, again, for like the SNAP program, it's like, okay, basically it's saying people who offer SNAP can't discriminate upon whether you're married, divorced, what sex you are, and people that are offering the school lunch program can't, segregate based upon, sexual identity as well as other these things too. So they can't say to an individual, you're transgender, therefore you can't get food assistance. That's really what it's saying for that program. So that the whole thing about the activities in school, functions, that's all really Title IX, like you said, Don. It's the food assistance program is basically saying that if somebody comes in needing food assistance, who is transgendered, in theory, you could have discriminated against them because of that, because it's not explicitly, not allowed. But in this is saying saying explicitly you cannot discriminate based upon sexual identity and orientation. So I don't know. That's my read on it, but I could be wrong too. So I'm certainly not a practice legalese.
Well, I did send that article to a friend of mine who's a AGRA attorney and so on to get his thoughts on it.
Yeah, please. I'm curious. Like I said, I'm part of it is I'm trying to educate myself too. So I'm really curious what your thoughts are and what other people's thoughts are too, because obviously there's a lot of rhetoric and there's a lot of hyperbolic statements from both sides. I don't know how to. It's all sometimes difficult to separate the chaff from the wheat when it comes to really what the intent is. So I'm not trying to prejudge it. I'm just trying to say what I've read and what it seems to be for me. So again, thank you for kind of giving your flavors on this too, because I certainly want to, understand not just my opinion, but what you guys think as well, because
All right, Dwight. I think we've ran well overtime tonight.
Yes, I'm so.
Yeah,
so
no,
sorry.
we're in extra innings. It was
I
a good
didn't mean to
show.
take over.
No, we're fine. Yeah, no, we're fine. We're fine. That's the beauty of being on the internet. We can go as long or as less. I mean, we used to do the show. This used to be a 3-hour show.
There's a point where you get to like you shouldn't go any further.
3 hours. That's 3 hours.
So let me just do
where
this,
it's
'cause
like too much.
I don't know if we ever do call outs to your midweek program.
Yeah, direct line. Yeah.
Yeah, so the direct line, and I forget again. I'm so bad with names. I really should not be in politics because I'm awful with names. But so the one guest that we had on direct line a few weeks ago, actually I think it was even.
Was it Bonnie Glick?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Bonnie Glick. So she was talking about China, and I just want to say that everything she said, I totally am on point with. I think that it was a great program. If you've not seen it, please watch it. I think it was a very informative and educational program.
And I will let Bonnie know. Yeah.
She has a lot of experience in this field, and so a lot of things I was kind of thinking about that I thought might be the case. She really kind of said, yeah, like for example, with Taiwan, or as Chinese call it, Taipei, that the Chinese government is really kind of looking to see how we respond to Ukraine, just kind of know how they're going to respond to that situation. So again, it's just interesting stuff, but I just want to make a shout out because I watched it because I was kind of doing the back technical stuff, but I really enjoyed that show. So
yeah, that was the night I went to go talk to a neighborhood association in Wheaton.
So
final thoughts. We'll start with you, Don.
Okay, so following, I guess, somewhere along the same lines of what we were just discussing with this non-discrimination thing is that the Associated Press has issued a few updates apparently to their AP style book, which is the guide that journalists are supposed to be using in terms of how they write their stories. So they also want to be more inclusive. So apparently there's now the term pregnant people, so people who can get pregnant but don't want to identify as a female or the sex, that type of thing like that. So you can do that. This is the AP continues to go down this path of this whole kind of political correctness, all these weird things that they want to do, and just other things that, I mean, I think a few years ago, didn't they, you couldn't say illegal alien anymore. You had to rephrase all of these things. So they constantly kind of try to soften some of these terminologies or just change things as we continue to see our culture. They do this, much more friendly to the other side. Of course, the AP is not a conservative news organization by any stretch of imagination, so it doesn't shock me. But it's
what
just
saying, the APA style guides, that's the American Psychological Association. And they're the people who also deal with like the DSM, the Diagnostics and Statistical Manual, which I think we're in version 5 now. I was going to really comment really quickly that to your point, Don, they did change between the last two versions because prior to the version 5, I think we're on right now, certain sexual proclivities were considered abnormal, deviant, kind of things, and those have been changed in the newer manual. So. obviously I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's just to your point. If it's the APA style guide, that may explain why they're going that route too, because I think they're slowly changing the at least in the psychology, terminology and those circles, these kind of phraseologies we use.
All right. Another thing that's our wonderful commander-in-chief was at the Naval Academy and speaking to the Naval Academy grads, and he mentioned how he had an appointment, but he had turned that down, and it was strange. It even shocked some of the historians and liberals who followed him. They're like, because the timeline didn't add up, because he couldn't. This was like 1965, the same year he was graduating from college, so it's something that could not have happened. But he threw that in there, and his own press, secretary, tried to pass that off. So he hadn't actually heard that part of the speech and couldn't comment on it. But the president has a lot of problems keeping facts in check. It doesn't really make any sense as to why he even bothered to say this, except he was trying to pander to the class of '72, that some of the people had been in attendance at this event and everything like that. But it's another head scratcher from the Biden administration. That, I guess, also in the fact that when he's freelancing, which is a dangerous thing, without any real prepared notes, where he's now classified the 9mm as a high caliber weapon. So that also had people like, they couldn't quite figure that out. So our president he's just such an interesting guy, to say the least. When he speaks, just really never know what he's going to do. Doesn't have the same gift of Ronald Reagan did. Ronald Reagan, to me, still is unparalleled in his ability to talk to people and to really resonate with American public.
You know who actually comes close to Reagan-esque qualities, and that's why I kind of liked him in 2012 when 2008 when he ran for president, and that was Rick Perry. Rick Perry's speech, his kickoff speech, was probably one of the best speeches I've heard from presidential candidates, frankly.
I think there've been several people that sometimes they give you that look, that flash, but then it doesn't last very long.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I will admit that, when McCain chose Palin, I thought, well, shoot, that wasn't a bad speech she gave, as an introductory thing, but it kind of went all downhill after that. So,
that's kind of what happened to Rick Perry too.
Right. I mean, they start gaffes and all these kind of other things get in there.
As you know, it's 2012. I'm sorry, not 2008. 2012.
Yeah, that one shining moment that showed maybe there's potential there, and then poof, it goes. And my last comment is the report this week that the last Howard Johnson's restaurant is closing.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, you guys are a little younger than I am.
I remember Howard Johnson's.
Oh, I
remember my parents taking me to the local one in Wheaton and having fried clams and also having ice cream for dessert. So I hate to see these places go. I mean, but that's history.
Well, I tell you, driving to New York, the New Jersey, New York turnpikes, they all had Howard Johnson's in them. And they had, I still say, they had the best milkshakes.
The hotel still exists in places. There's one in Evansville. It's not very good, but
is Ramada Inn still a place? Is that still?
Yes, it is.
Ramada's still around there, and I think the Hojo's is owned by Wyndham now.
Yeah.
So they
there used to be a
So
there used to be a Hojo's right by Union Station, if you recall. You could always see it from the metro station. Now it's the Best Western, I think.
Well, and there used to be one down near the Watergate, right across the street from the Watergate area.
Yep, and that GW bought that. Now it's Howard Johnson's Hall.
Is that what that is? Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So those are things. I will say this though, the one person that I have really grown to love following on LinkedIn, and it's really the only person that because her stuff is on there a lot. She's really, really very active. She's not a conservative or anything like this, but she is an independent businesswoman, but she used to be in the Georgia state legislature and she was a Democrat there. But her name is Stephanie Stuckey, and she bought her grandfather's family business, Stuckey's, which made pecan rolls. And they actually used to have freestanding stores, gas station, the whole 9 yards. and she's out like she and another person put together. They sunk money into this enterprise. They bought the name back from whatever company had bought it and basically had driven it to the ground. And they're actually making a little bit of money now as they revive. And she's on the road. I mean, I give this woman credit. She's a little bit younger than I am, I think, but she's on the road constantly, going to looking for Stuckey's and looking to try to rebuild the brand. She's going to like those trade shows for confectioners and stuff like that. She does little TikTok videos about the production line and stuff like this. And, you know, she's good. She's good on camera. She writes stuff really well. And she gets into these areas that are Americanas. You know, she'll take pictures of places, you know, that exist in small towns in Georgia, New Mexico, wherever. And to me, it's like it's a real neat history, you know, road trip. Think places that I'll probably never get to. You know what she's a really big fan of, which is really cracks me up? The Savannah Bananas minor league baseball team.
Oh, really?
She has given promoted. Matter of fact, I think it was sometime last week, she said that she had some extra tickets, and if like you messaged her, you know, and everything like that, you know, she says you could join me at the Savannah Bananas baseball game. And if you haven't seen any of the videos on Savannah Bananas, it's hilarious. And I love minor league baseball. Minor league baseball, I love baseball, but minor league baseball done right is some of the best baseball around because it's some of the most entertaining things. Because there are no real restrictions and rules. These owners do what they can to entertain the fans, and they just do some hilarious stuff.
I mean, I don't know if you've ever been to a Bay Sox game, you know, or a
I took my kids to Bay Sox games all the time. It was great. Though I think one of those things that seared into my memory is the mustard eating contest in between innings, where the guy where they're trying to do the mustard thing, and then one of the contestants reached their limit and just threw the whole thing up.
Oh no!
It just reverse course and everything like that. Actually, you know what's funny is have you seen the Mr. Freeze race in Atlanta for the Braves games? That has become a phenomenon. They select some fan gets selected to come down and race this guy. So this guy's in this uniform, this costume, and the contestant, the fan gets this huge lead, right? And they go from, I think, the bullpen area to the dugout area. So it's a fairly good distance. And, you know, the fans, you know, they got a huge lead and they're going along there and they're chugging along there. But apparently, I guess the guy who's Mr. Freeze was like a college track athlete. So, you know, he I think he wins like every single time. And there was a video the other day about some guy was running along. He seemed to be doing pretty well, and then just tripped. You know, another fail.
Hey, does Batman know about Mr. Freeze hanging out in Atlanta? Does Batman know about this?
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking about your all nostalgia for Dwight and Batman. That's why I meant to think about Mr. Freeze. So anyway, that's all my various weird projected thoughts.
Yeah. But you could check out the Savannah Bananas website. It's actually kind of neat looking. It's not a bad looking site.
I swear, one of these days I will get back in a car and take that long trip to Savannah and do that. If my son visits me again, I think I'm going to say, you need to spend enough time here so we get on the road and we'll drive down to Savannah and take in the game.
You know, he should do a road trip out here and you can meet him halfway in Savannah. Have him drive from Arizona, you know.
I'm not too far from Georgia when I'm in South Carolina. Just check it out sometime.
You were actually pretty close to the Savannah line, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you've been in Savannah. You're basically almost in Florida at that point.
Yeah, I know. You know, it's funny. Years ago, I drove to Florida, and we got an early start. And I tell you, I'm like, wow, it's only 4:00 and we're in Savannah. I go. And I asked the guy at the Welcome Center, because I was just stopping we were stopping at the Welcome Centers, right? And collecting maps, because back then we used maps. This is before
remember the
GPS.
ancient maps.
Yeah. And it's an ancient secret on how to fold the maps, you know. But we're down there, and so I go, oh yeah, we can make it to Florida, because, you know, we were headed to a little bit past Jacksonville, but I tell you, there's a lot of construction between Savannah and Jacksonville.
Florida's a very long state too. It like takes me like all day to drive to Florida.
It takes about 2 days.
White
2
for
days.
Moco at Savannah Bananas game.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe that's what we should do a little fundraiser. But and for you, so Jeff, final thoughts?
Yeah, I really didn't have anything. But Don, when you're speaking, you talked about the Savannah Bananas. For some reason, my mind went to Hanna-Barbera. I remember they had like their own sports teams that they're
The Laugh Olympics,
cartoon sports teams with the various creatures. I can't remember Captain Caveman and what was it?
Yep.
All the crazy creatures, because these are like the non-Disney characters. These are like all the people that just had too much time and just needed to come up.
Yeah, you had the really rottens where you had Dick Dastardly and Muxley. You had the Flintstones.
Yeah, was it Rocky and Bullwinkle? Was that part of the Hanna-Barbera?
No. Rocky and Bullwinkle were. You had the Scoobies, the Really Rottens, and the Flintstones were the three teams.
Oh man,
the Really Rottens always finished third.
I haven't heard the Really Rottens forever.
I mean, I think Dick Dastardly was there, Muxley. I want to say Creepella, and if you remember, the Flintstones had neighbors before the Frankenstones moved in next door. They were the Gruesomes, and it was kind of like their spin on. Then after they moved out, Sam and Darren Stevens moved in, which is kind of funny too. And
see, people ought to watch this show for some of the nostalgia and the history.
I know it's like
different time, different place.
Yeah, it's like here's the thing, I mean, you had what do you call Scooby Dum was also on the Scoobies team, which I thought was kind of funny.
Then we bring on one of our millennials, and they'll be like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
And basically, you had Dinky Dalton was part of the bad guys, Mr. Crapella and Mrs. Crapella.
All right, do I wrap it up? I can't sit here forever.
Oh yeah.
Let's go ahead. I mean, I don't really.
You're going to go through every single character, and I'm going to be here all night. I can't do that.
Dwight's like a history, like archaeology, like or was it anthropology? He knows all about like cartoon anthropology. So
yeah. Well, for all you folks who are not fans of the Queen, in your face, frankly, the Jubilee is going on all weekend. They're celebrating the old gals, But the funniest things, please watch it on Fox. It's always funny when they make a point that, she'll never see another one of these again.
So I need to go get crumpets and scones.
That's right. I'm not a fan of scones.
We're going to miss the Queen when she finally dies, because it's just never going to be the same.
Yeah, what they could, if they really wanted to have the same kind of function, they could take... They could basically, when she passed away, Charles doesn't take the throne. They don't give it to They don't give it to William. They give it to William's son George, and you have King George, and then he could have several jubilees because he'd be on the throne since he was like 10, 11 years old or something like that, But it's like I think the Empire gets a bum rap. People say the Empire, the funniest thing I've seen is this is what the Empire was when Queen Elizabeth became queen. This is what the Empire looks like today. And I'm thinking, they kind of had to shrink
Empire, the Galactic Empire.
No, it was the global empire. They weren't a galactic empire. No, they were not. They're kind of like because they're also Klingons because Shakespeare was Klingon, and we learned from Star Trek 6. Hamlet should be read in its original Klingon. Let's see. Busy week coming up. Join me at Stained Glass Pub this Thursday for the absolute very best pizza in Montgomery County. And that's Thursday night, 6:30 to 8. That will be a great event. And I mean, Don, Jeff, you guys have had Stained Glass Pub pizza. Isn't it the best pizza you've had in the county or in the state?
The best pizza I've had, I can't remember the place is, was next to Blair, the old Blair, where they had the pizza pie was like the crust was like this thick. It was just that spaghetti sauce, no, not even like cheese, just like spaghetti sauce, a little bit of like oregano or basil. I think it was basil.
Was it the one they sold at Orders?
I don't remember the name of it. I just remember that, when we had open lunch, we could go out to walk and you get the pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Just walk there. I don't know if it was at Four Corners or where it was, but it was someplace within walking.
Oh, that would not have been Four Corners. You're thinking of Postal Pizza.
Maybe, I don't know. I just remember that
Their phone number is 588-8888.
It was like having a loaf of bread with sauce on it, but it was great. I mean, it was the best. It still is again, no cheese, no toppings, just literally,
Mm-hmm.
like a huge oversized breadstick or something. I don't know. It's hard to describe, but it was
Yeah,
amazing.
that's Postal. I think you're thinking of.
Okay.
And their phone number was 301-588-8888. Isn't it funny how I remember these phone numbers from years and years ago?
It doesn't surprise me.
Or like this other phone number that's stuck in my 384-8844. It's like, I wonder whose number that was. Or 530-1138. Or 530-1177, I should say. But anyways, yeah, it's good. It'll be a fun week. Come on down, join us. It's great stuff. And everyone, bye. And we got somebody sent us a message just now. Here we go. Craig, one of our most loyal viewers. Yes, you can, Craig. Yes, you can.
I should tell you.
Good night, everyone.
You can't see it from this angle but it's on here. But the shirt I'm wearing tonight is actually from a pizza place.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but
very nice.
It's one from out west. So we had a missionary whose family owns a place. His last name is Kelsey, but his family has a place called Papa Kelsey's out of Idaho. So they have most of their locations are in Idaho, and they have I think they have one in Colorado and one in Arizona. So Papa Kelsey's, if you're out west, particularly in Idaho, support them. Good family, good people. His parents were very kind to me.
Cool. Awesome. And that will be it. See everyone next week. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.